The first story of the day is about the Swedish elections. I've been weighing in on the Swedish elections for a while because it's something that the mainstream media won't talk about. You know, a lot of socialist candidates and left-leaning people, they always mention Sweden. They say, you know, it's socialist programs and healthcare, it's working really well, and you know, they don't usually mention the downsides of Europe, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there is a lot of truth that the media doesn't mention. And Sweden, I've been reporting all year that they were swinging, you know, more right-wing than they've ever gone, and it held true, but not as much as people thought. So it was a kind of disappointing, in a way, finish for the Social Democrats. So for the Sweden Democrats. So the results are the winning party was Social Democrats. This is the more socialist left-leaning party. They've been ruling Sweden for, you could look it up, I believe at least 50 years. You know, they've been the head party for so long, and they got 28.4% of the vote today in Sweden. That is Social Democrats, and they are the left-leaning party, Social Democrats. And 28.4% might seem like a lot because there's multiple parties, but it's actually their lowest results in over 100 years. So although it was a bigger win than projected, I believe polls were saying they were going to get 25% of the vote. The Social Democrats got 28% of the vote, 28.4% of the vote, which is higher than expectations, higher than polls, but it's actually lower than they finished in 100 years. So even at their best finish, higher than predictions, it is their lowest finish in 100 years. The second party was the moderate party. It's the moderate party, but, you know, according to my research, they're the left-wing party too, because in the eyes of the media and, you know, left-leaning people, everybody, you know, outside of their ideology is far left. So even though they're moderate, I would say they're still pretty far left. They got 19.8% of the vote, which is down from 23.3% of the vote 4 years ago. Social Democrats down from 31% to 28%. And the Sweden Democrats, who are actually the right-wing party, the one that the media has been calling neo-Nazi roots, they're racist, sexist, xenophobic, you know, giving them the Trump treatment basically. Sweden Democrats got 17.6% of the vote, up from 12.9% of the vote 4 years ago. So overall, the Sweden Democrats finished lower than projections and lower than polls. They were the right-wing party that was expected to be first or second. I'm personally surprised. I was kind of, you know, hoping maybe, you know, it's not my country, so I don't really care that much, to be honest. But I was hoping maybe they could pull an upset victory and be the first party. I had a good feeling about it. I thought for sure they would be the second leading party, but they actually fell to the moderates, showing that Sweden is still very much under far leftist control, you know. But overall, before I get into a little more about this election, I want to say the Social Democrats, although winning, they're lower than they have been in 100 years. The moderate party is down 4%, and the Sweden Democrats did see the highest boost. That's the right party or the far right party. They're up from 12.9 to 17.6%. So even a disappointing finish to a lot of people is still, they're rising the most, and other people are on the decline. The question now, though, and I'm going to get into a lot of weird stuff that the media is not reporting, and I'll tell some of the stuff that they are reporting. The question now is, in 4 years, is Sweden going to continuously go further right-wing and eventually have that be the leading or second leading party? Or was this their kind of one chance to get a lot of representation in the government that they missed, and they're going to fall even further left-wing? We'll have to find out, because I also got some research on Rinkeby, which is an area in Sweden that's considered a no-go zone. That's what they call it in some news organizations. Rinkeby is 90%, you know, migrants and first-generation migrant families within the last, you know, couple decades or so. 90% migrant area, and they voted 77% for the Socialist Social Democrat Party, 12% for the Communist Party. So in a no-go zone that a lot, you know, there's been a lot of crime, a lot of explosions. This is the reason why the right wing in Sweden has gone up. It's because crime and violent crime and rape and explosions are, you know, going higher than ever. The actual no-go zones are voting 90% for socialists and communists. This is huge. 77% of Rinkeby voted for the Social Democrat Party. The Socialist Social Democrat Party. 12% for the Communist Party. That's 90% for socialists and communists in heavily migrant areas. So this is just kind of a viewpoint of Europe, Sweden, and maybe the direction that the United States is going, a lot of left-leaning socialist parties, such as Bernie Sanders in America, such as maybe the Democratic Party now in America, and the left-leaning parties in Europe, they have a lot of motivation to have more migrants, more immigrants, more illegal immigrants, overflow the country with, anybody, because, if they're voting 77% for them, that's a ridiculously huge voting block. And if you total with the Communist Party, like I said, that's 90% for socialists and communists. 90% vote in heavily migrant areas. I mean, even in big, tribalistic voter blocks in the United States, you don't even see that high of numbers. So, they're going to have all the motivation to bring in more and more and more people to Sweden now that they won, because they're voting heavily in their favor. I'm not saying they're going to do it, but it is just the reality is that they're voting in heavy amounts for socialists and communists. Very frightening if you're in America or Europe, seeing the direction that they're going. I just also want to notice, I won't even say frightening because you shouldn't be scared. It's all going to work out. But the big thing with the media, obviously the reason that the right-wing Sweden Democrats did very well is because there's a lot of crime and violence, and it's largely due to the refugee crisis that brought hundreds of thousands of people from the Middle East and Africa who, weren't exactly who the news said they were. There's nothing wrong with Africans and Middle Easterns. Obviously, God bless all people. I'm sure I have blood from some of those areas as well. But in those areas, you have enslavement. In Africa and the Middle East, there's people enslaving people. There's people murdering people and blowing each other up in record amounts in many areas. So if you just bring hundreds of thousands of people to these countries with no sort of common sense filter, of course it's going to raise crime and all of these stuff. So you, of course, see the rise in the right wing, not quite as much as I thought, not quite as much as the media thought today, but a significant amount. At the same time, though, the mainstream media has been labeling the Sweden Democrats, which is, once again, I keep repeating because it's confusing. Sweden Democrats are the far-right party. The media branded them neo-Nazis. Every time you see Sweden Democrats, I think a huge reason that they didn't do as well is because I've talked to people from Sweden that I know, and I said, who are you voting for? And I said, what do you think of the Sweden Democrats? And every person I talked to said, they're the Nazi party, they're the Nazi party, they're the Nazi party, because that's the message that the media put out, that they have neo-Nazi roots. In 1998, when they formed, allegedly, according to these news organizations, their treasurer and some of their founding members had neo-Nazi roots, either from other countries or rough affiliate with a group called Keep Sweden Swedish. So I guess that's racist, saying Keep Sweden Swedish. So they've branded them the neo-Nazi party. But just like in the United States, I have to say this, the irony between the Social Democrats, the Socialist Party, and the socialist media, the left-leaning media, calling them Nazis, yet there's many reports that the Social Democrats literally actually worked with the Nazi Party, not had like one or two members roughly related 30 years ago to the Nazis. You have the actual Social Democrats Party. According to reports, the Social Democrat Party colluded with the Nazis in World War II to arrest a Norwegian king going to the UK when it was under Nazi control. There's also reports that the Social Democrats, the Socialist Party in Sweden, in the 1900s, arrested journalists who criticized Hitler and also were interested in racial eugenics science and believed that the northern Swedes were inferior to the southern Swedes. So you have a case, just like in the United States. I'm no fan of Nazis. I'm no fan of neo-Nazis. But I find it very, very strange that the people who literally work with Nazis are the ones that are obsessed with calling everyone else Nazis. So they say the Sweden Democrat right-wing party is neo-Nazis, but we literally worked with Nazis, but we're going to cover that up. And it's really hard to comprehend all this stuff, but it's really happening. So the Sweden Democrats right-wing party put out a YouTube video showing the stuff that I'm talking about. They're saying, you're calling us Nazis, but you literally worked with Nazis. And YouTube deleted that video. So this is the mainstream media, folks. It's similar to a 1984 novel. You have literal people who colluded with Nazis calling other people Nazis. And then if you try to say that, no, you literally worked with Nazis, they'll delete your video and silence and censor you and make it so no one understands it using Nazi tactics. So you have Nazis calling neo-Nazis Nazis. It's just like, it's too much, but it's really, really happening. And the similar stuff's happening in the United States. I explained today on Twitter, You can look up Operation Paperclip. This is a United States secret operation from the 1900s. Operation Paperclip was a secret operation where the U.S. government, or elements in the U.S. government, or secret groups, you could look up exactly who did it, I can't quite remember the name. They took 1,600 Nazi scientists, Nazi leaders, like very highly intelligent or high-ranked Nazi people. 1,600 Nazis came directly to the United States in Operation Paperclip and started working in the U.S. government. I can't make this stuff up. I'm not a whistleblower. I'm not a leaker. You can find this on Wikipedia. It's not hidden. It's in major publications all over the place. Operation Paperclip, 1,600 Nazis came directly from Nazi Germany and worked directly to the United States government. They didn't come as refugees. They came directly into federal programs and started working there. The KKK, you could look it up all over the internet. The KKK was founded in the 1800s, in the late 1800s, to attack the Republican Party. The Republican Party was working with black Americans. The Republican Party was employing black Americans, and Democrats and other opposition didn't like that very much, so they started the Ku Klux Klan to stop Republicans from helping black people. This is a historical fact. I mean, they could maybe manipulate Google searches, they can manipulate the dictionary, but I find it very odd that the parties that have the most racism infused in them, and that literally worked with Nazis, and somehow they're obsessed with calling everyone else Nazis, and no one realizes it. They're just like, oh, they must be the neo-Nazi party, when the party that they voted for literally worked with Nazis. And you have literal Nazi organizations such as IG Farben, which was used to kill people in Nazi Germany, and eventually became Bayer, which moved to the United States, owns a lot of the medicine that you find in grocery stores. They own a lot of stuff that's in grocery stores. And Bayer just bought out Monsanto. So you have literal Nazi companies that were used to kill people and do all sorts of Nazi research, came to the United States, made billions of dollars, and bought Monsanto, who for like 30, 40, 50 billion dollars, I don't know, you could look it up, maybe 60 billion dollars. So now a Nazi-based company owns the food supply and a huge chunk of the pharmaceutical industry in the United States. But somehow that doesn't get on the news, and that's not on the TV, and nobody seems to want to talk about that. But you want to talk about Nazi collaboration, they now own Monsanto and your food supply. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. I like to be optimistic and positive, and, I'm blessed, I'm living good, I'm going to, hopefully live a long time and be prosperous and healthy and happy. But if the media wants to talk about Nazis all the time, I don't understand why they don't talk about all the Nazis and, the biggest companies and corporations and politicians who worked hand in hand with the Nazis. So overall, just a side note, the Social Democrats, 28.4%, they won the election as predicted to win, more than they thought they would win, but still their lowest ranking election in over 100 years. The Moderate Party beat out the Moderate Party. I mean, center right is like far left. Everything's right. So it's like they're not really the Moderate Party, but they got 19.8%. Sweden Democrats, the right-wing party, are up, and the media is obsessed with calling them Nazis, even though the politicians and media companies that they work with have way more Nazi affiliations than they do. But that's the world we live in, and at this point, they're tearing down statues, they're rigging algorithms, I'm going to talk about it later, they're changing history, they're manipulating education and all sorts of like encyclopedias, so to the point where no one's even going to be able to tell left from right, up from down anymore. So good luck, Sweden. You elected a socialist left-leaning government amidst your problems. I hope that Europe gets better. I hope that they step up, but we're seeing a huge crisis in Europe. I continuously, as nicely and respectfully try to put out the warning to people. South Africa is Europe in 20, 10 years. Europe is America in 10, 15, 20 years on socialism, communism, or modern day liberalism, which is a mixture of socialism and just keeps moving further and further left. So if you want to not turn out like Europe, I would start paying attention and, maybe have these conversations. If you don't want it to turn out like South Africa, where you're literally being persecuted and having your land stolen and being threatened on the daily, then maybe pay attention to what's happening in Europe, because it's all not great. We'll see what happens, but best of luck. Sweden, that is the story, those are the statistics, and that's my personal infusion to just go through the history of literal Nazis, since the media is so gung-ho happy about calling everybody that. I'm no fan of Nazis. I'm no fan of neo-Nazis. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about who's really working with them and who really previously worked with them.